guys, Anne-Marie here today, and I am continuing with my use it or lose it. It's not really a series so much as, I don't know, I'm just doing it with my stash. I'm systematically working through my stash, and I'm either, using an item up or finding a lot of versatile ways to use it, or I'm going to lose it and pass it on to somebody else that will love it. In that spirit, I'm diving into my stencils and will be experimenting with a variety of stencil techniques, ensuring I can create at least 3 different looks that I like with every stencil I choose to keep in my stash. First up in this series is the stencil here, Birds of a Feather 6x6 by Photoplay. I paid $3 on clearance at a cherry on top and got 3 really pretty cards with it, so I think that was money well spent. I'll walk you through each of the 3 stencil techniques I'm going to use to create 3 unique card backgrounds, and then I'll show you how I turn those backgrounds into 3 distinctive but coordinating cards. If you enjoy this series, I have at least a baker's dozen of stencils in my stash with their own 3 techniques stuck on a post-it on top waiting. So I'll start a playlist with this video and add to it as I go. All right, let's get started. First up, I just did a very basic ink blending look through my stencil. I blended Picked Raspberry, Dusty Concord, and Peacock Feathers Distress inks in a vertical gradient across my card background. This is a very basic but versatile technique. I love it and I use it often on my cards and on my nails because that's actually what inspired this first use. I had used a pink and a blue jelly on my nails, and when you layer jellies, it's just like blending inks. So I'd gotten this really pretty purple too. So decided I wanted to recreate that on my card background. I use this type of kind of gradient often just because I really love kind of the interplay of the colors and how they melt together, all that good stuff. My ink pad was a little dry, so I did get out my re-inker. Otherwise, I was going to have to work way too hard on this purple, but I got there. Okay, so my final background has this really pretty pink to purple to bluish green fade. For my second technique, I smashed my distress inks or dripped re-inkers for those same 3 colors onto my silicone mat, misted them each with water, and I did some messy watercolor through my stencil, again overlapping the colors in areas. I let this dry overnight, and then I came back the next day with a fine tip black pen, and I traced all of the openings of my stencil. Now, watercolor is kind of messy, so I did not trace this perfectly with, perfect borders or perfect technique or even solid ink strokes or anything, or pen strokes or whatever. I just did a quick and messy trace. Then I removed my stencil and I went over all of the shapes again, but this time freehand. This just really kind of matched that carefree, messy watercolored look, but it also offered definition and just helping those shapes pop. For my third technique, I wanted to play with the idea of an embossed resist. I smashed my embossing ink pad through my stencil onto the background. I removed my stencil, and then I covered the background with holographic embossing powder. I went ahead and heated that with my embossing gun. Finally, I took my same 3 colors and my blending brushes again, and I did a horizontal gradient this time to cover the negative space of the stencil. Please note, this to me is different than using a white or a clear embossing powder to do a resist. This is really an incomplete resist. Just because of the nature of this type of embossing powder. With the glitter in it, a lot of the glitter comes off when you're blending over it. So I ended up with glitter on my blending brushes, which meant I ended up with glitter on my ink pads. And then also just in doing the embossing, I ended up with glitter on myself. So it's a messy technique with glitter. And if you don't like glitter, then don't use glitter embossing powder. But I knew that's what I was going for. Like that's what I wanted. So I knew what I was getting into. But it is a different look if you use white or clear embossing powder. It's going to be much more solid. It's going to have a much more pristine look to it. The borders are going to be more precise, that kind of thing. Finally, I finished these out by using a free die set that I had received with a promotion in a scrapbook.com order. It was also Tim Holtz, Sizzix Thinlits Bold Text Set 1. You can use either the solid piece that kind of pops out, or it has all the separate letters too that you can place. But I really liked this look of negative space, and it honestly, it reminded me of that exact same stencil concept that I had just used on the card backgrounds. So I just matted each sentiment in a coordinating color scrap for my stash. I added some tiny flowers with the same scraps, and since I used the same color scheme across all 3 cards and then the same die set, these worked really nicely together as a set that I could give or sell at a craft fair or something. But each one has a unique look, which I liked too. So there's my 3 cards. I thought I really liked them. The colors just make me so happy. That is one stencil 3 ways. I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. I will be back with more stencils and more ways to use them. And in the meantime, I hope you have a scrappy, happy week. Bye.